Hello everybody, this is the Wikstrand. Today we're gonna take a look at the movie year of 1989. 1989 was a very good year. But, as it always goes, there's always a flip side to it. Even the best years and the worst years and all the years in between has a bunch of really terrible movies. And 1989 was no exception. It was not as horrendously awful as a couple of other movie years of the mid to early 80s that had some pretty horrendous top 10s that we could have done. I was spared by the gods of the Wikstrand to only having to do 1989, but there is one all-time absolute motherfucking horrible caravan of hell in this one. One of the worst movies I've ever seen, and oh, it's gonna take up #1 spot for sure, you can tell. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look for a second at the top 10 worst movies of 1989. Original release date 1989, the usual rules, you know. Any country, any genre. Everybody good? Good, let's go then. Number 10, The January Man. The January Man is a weird movie. When I saw this movie, I thought for the longest time that this was a movie about serial killers that, you know, they have just forgotten about, you know, the entire serial killer plot, and were, you know, having Kevin Kline bang some chick and Alan Rickman complains about stuff and being, you know, difficult, which is basically the best thing that you could do with Alan Rickman. Now, considering that you're having Alan Rickman and Kevin Kline in the same movie, this should be a good movie, but I have no idea what this movie attempts to be. I have no idea what, if it attempts to be a drama, it's not very interesting. If it attempts to be a serial killer thriller, it's not very suspenseful, and if it attempts to be a comedy, then it doesn't have any jokes that actually lands. I think this movie is very confusing and has one of the most deflated endings I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just weird. Have anybody any idea what this movie is actually about? Number 9, Warlock. Imagine for a second that you're having a supernatural fantasy horror movie, and you have a scenario that kind of feels like the Terminator almost. Woman has to be protected by somebody, you know, from the past, not the future in this case, and then you have this unstoppable killing machine that comes after them. That seems like a kind of a fun idea, but this movie fucking doesn't work. Julian Sands is awesome in his fantastically overacting, you know, goofiness, and he has a screen presence that is kind of fantastic, but the movie has just so many horrendously awful sequences with terrible special effects, woeful acting, and subpar writing. There are moments in this movie that I legit started laughing about because how ridiculous it was, and simply how woefully crap this whole thing was. But Julian Sands is the shining light in this one. This movie is really a nonsense movie. It tries to be this big, hulking, you know, menacing thing, but it ends up being a bit cute and a bit hilarious, and it doesn't work as a fantasy movie, it doesn't work as an action movie, it doesn't work as an adventure or a horror movie. Bad special effects in horror movies, you know, about the supernatural, that is the fucking jumping the shark or nuking the fridge or kicking the frog. That's my own little take on that thing. Warlock is a bad movie. I actually prefer the sequel, because they realized then that Julian Sands was the saving grace of this one, not this Rob Schneider douchebag looking motherfucker that, you know, attempts to be the executioner. Executioner. I spit in your executioner. Anyway, the sequel is, you know, has even more bad special effects, even more hokey bullshit, but at least it knew what it was. A one-man show for Julian Sands to, you know, be weird and, you know, acting out his, whatever it is he's doing. Warlock, on the other hand, a fucking shit movie. Number 8, Sea of Love. Feels weird looking at it now, but in the 1980s, Al Pacino's career was fucking tanking, and tanking hard way. And you know, the movies he made was Razzie nominated and Bombs and stuff like that. He actually had his career revitalized with this movie for some reason. Now, I've said my piece on this movie. I think it is boring. I think it feels contrived, and I wasn't into it at all. It's a weird combination of a serial killer hunting movie and a romantic drama. Wait a minute. January Man Strikes Again. Oh, Jesus Christ, I just figured that one out. Anyway, this is one of these genre blendings that very rarely works, and this is probably the most egregious case of all because I don't care. Sure, Ellen Burstyn is great, and it's always fun to have a early Samuel Jackson's outing, but this movie is just a movie I don't care about at all. Sea of Love is a competently made movie, but it falls even harder from grace because it's just a movie about nothing. I wish this movie could have been good, but it is just so many cliches and it is so slow moving and I don't care. Number 7, American Ninja 3. I was going to see this movie and it was on TV, and because I knew it because it was in the TV guide, it was pre-internet stuff. But I will never ever forget what the TV guide said about this movie. It has kind of stuck with me since then. American Ninja 2 was dumb, but it was kind of fun dumb. The first one was a bit, I don't know, too serious, made it seem like a weird thing to say about a movie called American Ninja. But both these movies were critically butchered, and I can't really blame them. They are bad fighting movies with terrible acting. But the TV guide very bluntly stated that if you don't even have Michael Dudikoff for your third American Ninja movie, you got problems. It's even worse than its predecessor. It is even worse acting, and the story is just nothing. Even though you don't need technically any good story for a movie called American Ninja 3, but at least try a little bit. It does, however, have a one-time, all-time classic in hokey nonsense stuff. It is when our hero takes his sword. This has to represent the sword, and the ninja comes around, gonna wreck some shit, and he just does this, and the ninja goes, and then the guy yells to him, "Die!" and then he dies. That was fun. The rest of the movie, not so much. Number 6, Godzilla versus Biollante. He's fighting a pot plant, for fuck's sake. Moving on. Okay. If I have to go any deeper to this one, I don't really like the classic Toho Godzilla movies after the first one, which I think is kind of good. But it's not really for me because it looks so hokey, and what do I prefer? Bad CGI or silly guys in rubber costumes? I don't know. But I do know one thing. Godzilla fighting a pot plant, it's dumb. It's really dumb. Number 5, Winter War, Talvisotta. I should say this first. The fact that Finland, this small little country, was able to stop the Red Army from invading them and was able to withstand Stalin's immense force is fucking amazing. It is an underdog story like no other. And I think it should be, in a major motion picture. Just not this one. This movie almost crosses the 200-minute mark. 200 minutes. And, it's so repetitive. The Russians comes, they fight them off, and then they have some conversations. And then we do it all over again for over 3 hours. There's so much more you could have had into this one. But I know what they were going for, and I understand it. But I was just so bored by it. If this movie would have been, a shorter movie, or if it would have had better production value, or if I cared about the characters, this probably could have been, one of my favorite movies of 1989. No, not this time. Better movies about the Winter War and the following conflicts with the Soviets have been made in Finland. This is not just for me, and I wish I had something positive to say about this movie, but I don't. I'm sorry. Really sorry. God, 3 hours and 19 minutes for this. Jesus Christ. Number 4, Harlem Nights. Richard Pryor is very funny. Eddie Murphy is very funny. them together in a, you know, a gangster comedy kind of a thing set in the 30s with, you know, the nightclubs and the flashy cars and stuff like that. That could be awesome. It wasn't. This is a weird movie because it's very shouty. It's not very funny. The overacting just makes me cringe all the time, and there are some downright kind of unpleasant moments in this movie that just doesn't work. I don't know what it is. Maybe this is just one of these cases where I don't get, you know, what the movie is actually about, or maybe even worse, this movie is simply bad. I didn't care about Eddie Murphy. I didn't like his character. I didn't like Richard Ramsey's character. I didn't like anybody's character in this one. This is just a movie with a bunch of terrible, horrible people in it. Now, you can make movies about this one and you can make it work, but then in that case you have to know what the movie you're making is. If this would have been a good comedy, it could have worked. If this would have been a hard-hitting crime, you know, gritty drama, it could have worked, but it's too silly for it. It's one of these movies that doesn't know what it is and tries to be too many things at the same time. I wish I liked Harlem Nights. They have some of my favorite people in it, but it doesn't work. Not at least for me, at least. Number 3. Lock Up. Subtle as an Ultimate Warrior promo, intelligent as a Michael Bay movie, and filled with more cliches than you can absolutely handle. This weird prison movie with Sylvester Stallone and Donald Sutherland could have worked. Wait, no, wait, it probably couldn't have, because this movie is so fucking stupid. So Stallone plays this convict that is a nice convict, and he has, you know, this ward coming that has a vendetta against him, played by Donald Sutherland, and, you know, it's gonna be a struggle between them. And it could have maybe worked if everything wasn't so over-the-top dumb and over-the-top boring and just stuffed with prison cliches, and I'm just, oh god, this movie has one of the worst endings I've ever seen. This movie made me actively angry when I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and I just realized, Jesus Christ, this movie fucking sucks. If this movie would have been a little bit more nuanced, we could have had a, well, passable movie. Not a good movie, not an okay movie, but a passable one. As it stands now, we have an absolute load of crap ahead of us. Mainly because the characters are so over the top, but at the same time they try to take this as a serious movie. If this would have been a comedy, a black comedy that would have been, you know, completely nuts, it could have worked. If this one would have been, you know, a more serious drama with, you know, with characters with more nuance, as I said, it could have maybe worked, but you don't buy any of this. It is so ridiculous that you just look and say, come on, can't you do anything correct? I love these two guys, but this is just so bad. Number 2. Friday the 13th. Jason Takes Manhattan. False advertisement. Jason does not take Manhattan in this one. He's in Manhattan for, you know, 2 or 3 minutes, then he's down in the sewers. And before that, we're spending so much time on that fucking boat that goes nowhere and gets, you know, nowhere fast. It's not a secret that I hate slashers, and especially Friday the 13th movies. I think they are just the same, and I think they're bad. The only exception to this is probably Friday the 13th Part 6, because they incorporate some humor and some self-awareness into the whole thing that I think was, you know, kind of fun. This one is just boring, and it is just, you know, dull and bad kills, uninteresting locations, and the novelty of being in Manhattan is snuffed out for, you know, they couldn't shoot in Manhattan because of the lack of budget. It could have been fun if you know, could have taken Jason into a more urban settings, but after a while you just realize, well, it's the same thing as all the other bad Friday the 13th movies. But what you gonna do? If you like slashers, I still say you probably would like this one, even though I think it is crap. And number 1, Ghosts Can't Do It. So what do you do if you have a really hot wife with more curves than a racetrack but has absolutely no talent and almost no charisma at all? Well, you direct her yourself in movies that you have written, and you make her take her clothes off every once in a while and see if that works. Does it work? No? Okay. Of all the bad movies on this list, at least they had, you know, a thing or two that worked in its advantage. Ghosts Can't Do It is one of the single worst movies I've seen in my entire life. I have seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands, thousands of movies. There are only about 12 movies in the history of the cinematic history that is worse than Ghosts Can't Do It. Let me explain why. It is not because Donald Trump is in this one. Donald Trump plays himself, and he plays himself well. Enough said about Trump. I'm going to talk about Bo Derek now. Bo Derek is one of the worst actors of all time. Not even Blake Edwards could get anything out of it. But since her husband, you know, had his own little production company, he could do terrible, horrible, awful movies. But this one just might take the cake. Ghosts Can't Do It is marketed as a romantic comedy that also involves ghosts and murders and possession of bodies, I think, and mafias, I think, and other stuff as well. So Bo Derek's husband dies in a heart attack. Now after his death, he gets to sit in some kind of a dark room and yells, and she can hear him, but nobody else can. And then she goes down to this weird, what is it? Some Caribbean island where she, you know, finds his hunk, and she thinks that maybe if I kill him, then you can take possession of his body. Fun! And, you know, she can have her husband back, but in a younger version. This movie has some of the worst acting I've ever seen in my entire life. This movie has the worst transition shots I've ever seen in my entire life. This movie has some of the worst editing I've ever seen in my entire life. This movie has terrible music, it has woeful script, and as a comedy, it fucking doesn't work. It's not funny, it is not endearing, it's mostly gross. It's mostly confusing, and I find the entire thing really, really uncomfortable to watch at times. And sometimes I just get confused. What the fuck happens? You know, we have all these weird subplots with, you know, assassins and politics and weird things where she goes to Hong Kong and have intimate conversation with Donald Trump about, you know, her husband's business or whatever, and we just depart from the entirety of the killing some guy to insert my husband's spirit into him kind of a thing. And we also have Anthony Quinn just rambling, yelling, and you know, laughing hysterically in his weird you know, heaven setting, which basically looks like somebody just stuck him in some kind of a sound booth and dressed it up with some black, you know, curtains or stuff like that. It's so bizarre. This entire movie is so bizarre. You have no idea what's gonna happen the next time, and I mostly think that Bo Derek is just possessed all the time. But then she takes her clothes off and shows her tits, and then I was sort of, okay, but then I go, oh no, wait, this movie sucks. It's difficult for me just to summarize up how terrible this movie is. It is one of the single worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It has to be seen to be believed. My description of it is simply not enough to really showcase how brutal this movie is. This movie is a rough watch. If you can get through this one unscathed, you are a brave soul. And this movie gets me every time. It is so stupid, and the ending is so stupid. Ooh. Oh God. So that was the worst movies of 1989. I'll see you next time from, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.